The string quartet, 2 violins, a viola and a cello, is one of the bedrocks of classical music, a tradition which stretches back to Joseph Haydn in the 18th century. And today there are more ensembles than ever to expand the quartet's repertoire and soundscape. Tonight we'll be celebrating some of the greatest of them in myriad styles and settings. From black and white to colour, from stately homes to helicopters. Our classic quartets at the BBC.
The bond between them is tremendous, must be. If 4 men are to hammer themselves into one instrument, weld themselves with all their differences into one single voice. They all live close together, meet every day whether there's a concert or not, rehearse in each other's homes in turn, travel together. All 4 spend some time teaching, or playing in orchestras or giving recitals, but their central occupation is this quartet. And what each of them individually brings to the quartet is a life almost wholly given up to music.
And that's the end of the late weather forecast.
Music at night is given by the Allegri Quartet, Eli Godden violin, James Burton violin, Patrick Ireland viola, and William Pleath cello. They're to play music by Ravel.
Like the Allegris, our next classic quartet is also British. They met at the St Endellion Music Festival in Cornwall in 1979. Originally founded in Hungary, the Takács Quartet moved to the United States in 1983, where they're resident at the University of Colorado. Here, they capture Dvořák's tribute to the spirit of America. In the last 50 years, more composers have been working with string quartets to reimagine what the form can do. And our next classic quartet is renowned for leading the way.
We're trailblazing, we're walking in fresh snow. Nobody can tell us how this music should be done by looking in a book or researching a period of history 200 years ago. Perhaps the only person who can point us in a direction which could be called right would be the composers, who we, in many, many cases, we work with.
In the summer of 1964, the BBC broadcast a series of chamber music concerts and invited one of Britain's most popular quartets into the studio.
Good evening. Omnibus this week begins at a concert in Stoke which features the 4 young musicians who make up the Lindsay String Quartet. Now, they're a very remarkable group of players, this quartet, not only for their musical ability, but also because one of their aims is to break down the mystique which still surrounds chamber music, even for some people who reckon to enjoy opera, say, or romantic symphonies. At Peter Cheeseman's Victoria Theatre in Stoke, the Lindsay's been doing an entire Beethoven cycle this season in a specially informal atmosphere. The Omnibus Film Unit spent some time with them last January to prepare this portrait of the Lindsay Quartet at work.
We found that really a university was a marvellous basis on which to build a quartet. It gives you a chance to not consciously mould yourselves, but just purely by being together for the number of hours that a university position will allow you to do, because you definitely need time to mould 4 people's way of thinking and way of playing.
Beethoven was commissioned by Count Razumovsky. He wrote 3 quartets of 59. And I think the slow movement in 59-1 is just out of this world, just fantastic. That's the great thing about quartets. I mean, you imagine most people doing the same thing for 20, 30, 40 years, playing the same music time and time again. Well, we've only done it for 9 years now, but I still, every time I play it, I still find something new every time. I'm not saying that this is the only type of concert it should be. I think there should be every possibility. I mean, I like dressing up for certain occasions, but when you see people in tails on a platform, say, 50 yards away from you, you tend to think of them as purely machines that are producing a sound that you want to hear. We're trying to break that down with these particular concerts, provide people with something to drink, and try and show them that we are, in fact, human beings with the same sort of feelings as they have. And I think this doesn't often come across.
And now from the latest studio in Maidstone to St George's Church in Bristol. The Armenian-born violinist Levon Chilingirian founded his celebrated string quartet in 1971 with the cellist Philip de Groot. Here they are, playing the opening of Schubert's famous one-movement work for string quartet, the Quartets At Levon Chilingirian loved the work of our next classic quartet, which remarkably kept the same founding members throughout its long history. They're interviewed here by Bernard Levin.
For a third of a century, these four men have been making music together. And in that time, they have welded themselves into a single, unique musical instrument with a sound that is loved in every land where the great classics of the chamber music repertoire, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, are known. They are the Amadeus Quartet. One thing that we all wonder about is how you four came together in the first place.
Well, first of all, the first other member of the quartet I met was Peter Schidlow, and we met during internment. Near the beginning of the war, we met in a camp for internees of
enemy nationality, which was either German or Austrian or both. And this is where we first met.
Was the tradition then that, I mean, you have broken all the records, of course, but was the tradition then for a quartet to remain with unchanged personnel?
Of course, it was to be hoped that they would, but it hardly ever happened.
Okay.
I mean, people changed, almost inevitably changed after a few years. One or the other wanted to leave, or the whole ensemble tended to break up, or whatever. I think we have next, right at the beginning of the year, it will be 35 years Amadeus Quartet, unchanged, which is, I believe it is a record.
Must be.
In fact, it's never happened ever since the string quartet was invented about 250 years ago.
She said, quick, go. She said, quick. She and she said, quick, and she said, quick, go. Quick, go. And he said, don't breathe. 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 Into the Scandinavians. Into the Scandinavians. For 4 days and 4 nights. And then we went through these strange sounding names. Strange sounding. And then we went through these strange sounding names. Names. Lots of cattle wagons there. Lots of cattle wagons. Lots of cattle wagons there. They were loaded with people. They were loaded with people. They shaved us. They shaved us.
The BBC series Music in Camera provided a television showcase for the world's greatest musicians, with over 70 programmes broadcast in the late 1980s. In 1989, the Tokyo String Quartet were invited to perform Schubert's famous Death and the Maiden quartet in A minor. Here's the scherzo. Founded in the Soviet Union in 1945, the Borodin Quartet has a long and prestigious history. Its members worked closely with Shostakovich and performed at the funerals of both Prokofiev and Stalin. All the members of the quartet over the years have been graduates of the Moscow Conservatory. In 2014, BBC Proms Extra invited the young British ensemble, the Heath Quartet, into the studio. The ensemble is much admired for its performances of Michael Tippett, and they went on to win the Gramophone Chamber Award 2 years later. From the Royal College of Music to an airstrip in Germany. Yes, it is still the string quartet, but perhaps not as we know it.
Several times I have dreamt works of music, and I woke up and then made notes and have realized them. I would never think of having four quartet players flying in four helicopters through the air, and me being above and looking through the helicopters and seeing these four helicopters flying around and playing the string quartet perfectly synchronous. Then I made notes, and when I found the time, I wrote out the score. And then when I sent that score to the Salzburg Festival, they thought I had gone crazy, you see. They didn't know how to do this. I hear helicopters which annoy me all the time. But in my dream, they became musical instruments. So I had in the mixing console very clearly separated the four sounds of the four helicopters and of the four instruments, always in pairs. I could project them over four groups of loudspeakers.
Our final classic quartet also leads the way in exploring new avenues and audiences. Here they are, working with Elvis Costello.
For those of you who haven't met them before, please let me introduce you to the Brodsky Quartet.
They talk to the sister, the father and the mother, with a microphone in one hand and a checkbook in the other, and the camera noses into the tears on her face, the tears on her face, the tears on her face. You can put them back together with your paper and paste, but you can't put them back together, you can't put them back together. What would you say, what would you do? Children and animals, 2 by 2. You give me the needle, give me the rope. We're gonna melt them down for pills and soap. Four and 20 crowbars, chimney your desire. Out of the frying pan into the fire. The king is in the counting house, some folk have all the luck, and all we get are pictures of Lord and Lady Muck. They come from lovely people with a hard line and hypocrisy. There are ashtrays of emotion for the faggins of the aristocracy. What would you say, what would you do? Children and animals, 2 by 2. Give me the needle, give me the rope. We're gonna melt them down for bills and soap. Give me the needle, give me the rope. We're going
2 violins, a viola and a cello. The format might not have changed much, but as we've seen, it remains endlessly flexible. A musical chameleon able to adapt to many different styles and settings, blending together past and present.
Stand by, everybody. We'll go ahead with the second movement in 5 seconds from now.
But tonight, we leave you back at the BBC's Maida Vale studios in 1960.
Music at Night is given by the Allegri Quartet, Eli Gorin, violin, James Burton, violin, Patrick Ireland, viola, and William Pleath, cello. They're to play music by Ravel.